The last howl of Wuthering Beck. In the shadowed valleys of Yorkshire, where the heather clings like sorrow to the moors, and the winds wail through the dales as if mourning their own existence, there lies a forgotten village, Wuthering Beck. It is a place the world left behind, where the nights stretch longer than in other lands, and the fog sits heavy and unmoving, like a shroud draped over a corpse. Here, the old legends never died. They merely bide their time, waiting to be remembered. It was a night of unnatural stillness when the first scream echoed through the village. The peasants, huddled in their cottages, clutched their hearths as the chilling cry pierced the darkness. Old John Whitaker, the village elder, whispered to his grandson by the fire, his voice trembling.
"'Tis the Barguest boy, the hellhound of Wuthering Beck."
The lad's eyes widened, the tales of his childhood rushing back with brutal clarity. Stories of a beast, blacker than midnight, whose howl heralded death and despair. No soul who crossed its path was ever seen again. Their bodies vanished as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. On the outskirts of the village, at the edge of the desolate moor, lived a woman known as Mother Elder. Some called her a healer, others a witch, but all feared her. She was the sin-eater of Wuthering Beck, tasked with taking upon herself the sins of the dead so they might find peace. That evening, she stood by the door of her crumbling hovel watching as the fog rolled in thick and black, a thing alive. The hound's mournful howl reached her ears, and she felt the chill of its omen deep in her bones.
"Something stirs,"
she murmured, her voice a dry rasp.
"The Barguest is restless."
She wrapped her shawl tighter and began the slow walk to the village, knowing her presence would be as welcome as the death she bore tidings of. The Squire Edmund Hargreaves, Lord of Wuthering Beck, sat alone in his manor nursing his brandy. He had heard the howl too, and he knew what it meant. The Barguest was not just a legend to him, it was a debt collector. The squire's ancestors had made a pact with the beast centuries ago, binding it to guard their lands in exchange for a soul each generation. But Edmund, driven by greed and desperation, had broken the pact, sacrificing not his own kin, but the innocent, village children gone missing over the years, their bodies never found. And now the Barguest had returned to collect its due. A scratching at the window snapped him from his thoughts. There in the dim candlelight he saw it, a shadowed form, eyes like embers burning in the dark. The Barguest, waiting. Edmund's hands shook as he reached for his rifle.
"You'll not have me!"
he shouted, though his voice betrayed his terror. The hound's growl, a low rumble that seemed to shake the very walls, was his only answer. While the elder stood before the gathered villagers in the square, her presence casting a pall over the crowd.
"The squire's sins have brought this upon us,"
she proclaimed.
"The Barguest comes to collect what is owed. He has wronged the beast, and now we all suffer for it."
"What can we do?"
someone cried out.
"We cannot fight a ghost."
She nodded solemnly.
"But we can make amends."
She held up a bundle, an effigy crude and twisted, bound with heather and thorns.
"We must atone, offer a life to save the rest."
A murmur ran through the crowd. The old ways were not easily embraced, but fear is a powerful motivator. As the night deepened, the villagers gathered, their faces pale and grim. They knew the cost of defiance. The Barguest prowled the village's edge, its eyes glowing with a terrible hunger. The fog swirled around it like a living thing, hiding and revealing the monstrous form in flickers. The hound's growl was a promise of pain, a vow of vengeance. Squire Edmund fled through the narrow lanes, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He stumbled, the mud sucking at his boots, dragging him down as if the very earth sought to claim him. Behind him the hound's howl rose, a sound of pure, relentless fury. He reached the churchyard, where the villagers had gathered around a bonfire, the effigy burning, the flames licking hungrily at the night sky. Mother Elder stood before them, chanting in the old tongue, calling upon the spirits of the land to appease the beast. But it was too late. The Barguest leapt from the shadows, a blur of black fur and shining teeth. It landed before the squire, its eyes boring into his very soul. Edmund screamed, a pitiful, wretched sound, but there was no mercy in those fiery eyes.
No!
He cried, as the beast's jaws closed around his throat.
No!
The scream cut off, replaced by a sickening crunch. The villagers watched, horror-struck, as the Barguest tore the life from their lord, the pact fulfilled in blood. With its vengeance sated, the Barguest turned and faded into the mist, its form dissolving like smoke. The village stood in silence, the crackle of the dying fire the only sound. Mother Elder looked out over the haunted faces of the villagers.
The debt is paid,
She said softly.
but remember this night, for the Barguest is bound to these lands still. As long as there is sin, it will return.
And so it was that the legend of the Barguest of Wuthering Beck was carved into the bones of the land, a grim reminder of the price of broken oaths and the terrible justice that stalks the moors.